And so, progress of food security in America. So the right to food, where did that come from? Well, it began in a time, in an era, when a lot of social programs and things were developing. So Franklin D. Roosevelt was the first president, anyway, to outline these 4 freedoms that we could have. His wife, Eleanor, was very active as well in public life regarding human rights in general. Excuse me. And so during World War I or II, 1941, she's becoming active. And just after, around 1948, UN Declaration of Human Rights says everyone has the right to stand to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and his family, including food. So this is kind of interesting. I mean, through most of history, everybody provides for themselves. So each kind of their own. You have your own little farm, and of course, in smaller villages, you bring the excess of your products into town, and you exchange, barter, sell, so that you get money to buy other things and such. But here we have, at a national level, and even at an international level, with the UN declaring human rights, including food. So the interesting idea here is that if the government is going to state this, that everyone has a right to food, freedom of speech and expression, freedom to worship God, a freedom from want, that is a healthy life, freedom from fear, a peaceful world, and this UN, then the government has that point some responsibility for ensuring that its citizens have that right or have that access. It's the government's responsibility then to some degree, at minimum, to ensure those rights are upheld. Now, the problem is how to decide if and what to do when an individual or a family is unable to access the standard of living. Well, the goodness of a lot of people in history, the church, is to provide for those who could not provide for themselves. And so, blessed enough, lucky enough, many people have access to food through these charities and programs. But ultimately, if your income, for whatever particular reasons, is not up to a minimum par, then the government has programs to help you live just above that poverty level. We'll see some of those programs in this presentation. So, who was the first president to suggest the right to food? Teddy or Rosie? You selected Abraham Lincoln, Barack, or Teddy. You're wrong. Previous slide just told us it was Franklin Roosevelt. So what is food security? All right, so food security, there's this video to watch. So you've already watched the global food crisis, and you had a good spiel on the need to focus on quality calories. And within the decade, we need to increase the number of calories available to people who are hungry. And it was a good story that she shared. Here's another TED Talk that really rings the alarm for a public health crisis here. Again, a good personal testimony and story of an American, just a regular citizen. And I think you'll learn, hopefully through a series of videos and this PowerPoint, that poverty, hunger, and food security are probably not as far reached as you might think. And some of you may have been affected at points of time in life at a level of low food security. It may not be chronic, it could be acute moments, and that's what we're going to define. So basic human needs that a government attempts to address in successful societies and civilizations is oxygen. So you have pollution laws, clean air to breathe, water, clean water. So a lot of city municipalities, and you pay for that water. It comes through your faucets, and you pay a toll for however much you use. And then food. And we can get that through way of food stamps and other types of government programs. And then clothing and shelter. So you have government housing, or the projects, so to speak. So we're going to talk about food because that's what the focus of this course is. So all people at all times have access to sufficient, safe, nutritious foods that meet their dietary needs, as well as, and this is important, food preferences to maintain a healthy and active life. So food aid programs that go to these other countries, whether it be Africa or Dominican or Haitians, a lot of them don't have choice. So a lot of them eat time and time again the same thing. So food security is being able to, what is the importance of having access to preferences to maintain a healthy and active life? This includes physical, economic, and social access to food. You got to be able to afford it. You got to be able to get to it. Social access to food. What would that mean? So the 4 dimensions of food security are availability, access, utilization, and stability. Read those definitions carefully for time's sake. We're going to go look at those 4 dimensions just a little bit further. So looking here, food security indicators, and here's the dimension. Excuse me. Let me move my picture over just a bit. Availability. So the average dietary energy supply adequacy, average value of food production, the share of dietary energy, average protein supply. On your PowerPoint, make sure you just kind of read through these so you get a good idea of what it means to have food available. Supply of protein and animal origin. Supply of protein, vegetable, vitamins, and minerals. Just having your diet comprised of one substance, you begin to see nutritional deficiencies. You might be full, you might be in your calories, but you're not going to be at optimal health to perform your peak at a job and therefore to earn top or better pay. Access, percentage of paved roads. Roads are access to food in grocery store. Road density, rail line density, domestic food price index, prevalence of undernourishment. All of these are indicators of access. In the green, we have stability, ranked with monetary. You have serial import dependency ratios, the value of food imports over total merchandise exports, per capita food production variability, blue utilization. I encourage you to look up some of these. You don't have to memorize these, of course. The main thing are availability, access, stability, and utilization according to these definitions here. But what does it mean? Just so you can see, there are multiple parameters to each of these 4 dimensions of food security. It is not a simple problem. It is complex. So utilization, are we getting that food in an appropriate manner? As we can tell that by the percentage of children under 5 years of age that are affected by wasting. We'll talk about that shortly. Or who are stunted, underweight, adults who are underweight. Among pregnant women, children under 5 years of age that are anemic. Iron and vitamin A deficiencies are 2 of the most prevalent micro and macronutrient deficiencies that we see. Iron and vitamin A. Iodine deficiency in the population, we see goiter. So is the food being utilized and dispersed in a fair, equitable manner? So which of the following is related to food access? What were the 4? Availability, access, stability, utilization. Which of those had to do with food access? If you selected roads, you are right. Food insecurity then occurs when people lack access for sufficient amount of safe and nutritious food for normal growth and development and a healthy life. Insecurity is a lack of these things. It includes intellectual understanding of hunger and undernutrition, as well as understanding the life experiences of those who are affected. Food insecure, unable to acquire adequate food for one or more household members because they had insufficient money and other resources for food. So food insecurity is not starvation. That is a characteristic of people not having enough food to eat, and that is definitely food insecurity. But it is not the characteristic of there being not enough food to eat. All right. So having enough food to eat and there being enough food to eat are two slightly different situations. Going back to this slide, you have very low food security. Eating patterns of one or more household members are disrupted, and food intake is reduced because they can't afford it at some point. So on your PowerPoint, go back and watch this video at some point during the year, not this year, but everybody who experiences, even short term for a month or so, has a period of insufficiency. We just hit a time when there was the government shutdown for about a month and a half, and if that happened to fall on many people's last month for paying rent, groceries, car payment, we tend to live up to our standard of living, that is our income. Not too many people live under their income, and of course that varies from person to person, household to household, depending on how many members are there. So whenever there's insufficient money and other resources for food, that is a point of food insecurity. This is what we're trying to alleviate, and it happens to regular people who one month may be employed and the next month may not. If you've fallen behind on bills or anything like that, this compounds the issue, of course. And again, it's a complex issue. There's personal decisions and behaviors to consider during these times. But nonetheless, there has to be options. It is their right to access choice of food. So look at this video. It's about a 5-minute video about a family here in the heartland of America who, you got a working father, a stay-at-home mother with a couple children. And I want you to see just how and where they get their food from and how normal they pretty much are. And you would say that sometimes they have very low food security. And we'll talk about the choices they have and what some things are, but you'll get good ideas there. Those of us who are blessed with, power of choice, we have our desert island food. At least in our house, we have this thing where we'll say, we'll have chips and salsa. For others, it's pizza or guacamole. You say, if you were stranded on a desert island and you had one kind of food pick to eat, what would it be? We have the luxury of joking and having those kind because, we love food, we have choice. But eating the same thing, even I think if you had that food, desert island food, 3 times a day, even once a day, if it was the only food you were having for a week, I ain't gonna lie, I'd be sick of guacamole. I'd be oozing green out my ears or something. We need choice. There's a reason why we have a lot of taste buds for sweet, savory, salty, bitter. It's not all just because we eat one kind of food. It's because we eat many kinds of food, and that's because we need many different nutrients. So choice is very big. Quality of nutrients is very big. Quality of calories, not just number of calories. So we think about in a developed country such as ours and those who live in secure, food secure households, we can address other issues of social justice. And we forget then, by taking for granted, that food availability is in itself a certain social requirement, social justice need. So without food, Norman Borlaug, you might recognize him if you're an ag, a name you hear often spoken, the Green Revolution. Without food, man can live but a few weeks. Without it, all other components of social justice are meaningless. This is the primary concern. So I'm not going to go through this whole slide set. I'm going to pick and choose some of these. A lot of them are self-explanatory. Some of them are not. Just to point out here, long-term food insecurity, such as occurs during extended political conflicts, results in long-term poverty. We saw again with that government shutdown, that could be the impetus for several households across America to go down a spiral possibly they might not recover from if it left them homeless or evicted and then with parents and something they can't never get out of. depending on their parents' plight or situation. It's just an ugly road to travel. So protracted crisis. These are 20 countries considered to have prolonged disruption of livelihoods. So again, not just households, but entire countries and civilizations where food insecurity, maybe not chronically, but they've had a kind of a protracted crisis where for times they were okay, and then at other times political upheaval, war, things like this can make it. So you look here, all developing countries, you have China and India, you have countries in protracted crisis right now where the prevalence of undernourishment is measured. That is a lot of countries in protracted crisis. And the comparison between 2005 and 2007 versus 2010 and 2012, you'll see hasn't changed a whole lot. And it's important to consider the relationship between, again, social, political conflict and food insecurity. So food security versus nutrition security. This is what was mentioned in that video, quantity versus quality. Eating in Ethiopia does not have the same effects, even if it's the same quantity, as eating in America. The quality of the calories counts. So it is possible to be obese and still be undernourished. As a matter of fact, I would say that your appetite is changed. I would say, oh, I forgot to turn the light on. Just realized I'm in the dark. Sorry. Appetite has changed, attitude, emotion, being dehydrated changes your outlook on the day and your mood. Being hangry, we've all heard that term. We're grumpy until we eat, right? We've got to tame the savage beast inside. And once we get food in us, we can think and behave like normal humans. Well, can you imagine being hangry all day until the next day and then the next day? Or if you're barely getting a little bit of food or something, one meal a day, you're going to have a lot of hangry days. So it is possible to be obese and undernourished, excess calories. I know I've been a victim of being judgmental of some, who don't look like maybe they would be hungry, but we can't take for granted that they've been fed and that they have the best of health. The nutrition they have access to may be insufficient. Having food does not mean adequate nutrition is available. Undernutrition. Some of y'all are going to be dietitians, dietetics. I know I saw hospitality. I think everybody in education, health, nutrition, and food business to whatever degree has a kind of knowledge and insight and responsibility to help those who do not have that access or knowledge. They need to be taught. And again, there's a lot of programs out there. We just got to get that information to those people who need it most. So undernutrition is a continuous deficiency of one or more nutrients such that physiological needs are not met. Inadequate or imbalanced diet, poor absorption or utilization of a nutrient, and over time that can lead to death. Especially in utero, if it was the mother who was malnourished to begin with, then that baby's not going to come out strong and thriving. So children, generally harder to change than undernourishment. It's a more complex issue. 17% of children under 5 in developing nations are underweight, and the highest there is in Southern Asia. And you can see some of the practices here and how health professionals in those countries determine weight and health. So one thing I do want to point out before I wrap this little segment up, forms of undernutrition. Protein calorie undernutrition, that's acute undernutrition. Chronic undernutrition, that is for moments at a time. It could be a week, could be a month. Chronic undernutrition, it's a lifetime. Micronutrient deficiencies alone, if you might be getting, again, the calories, but it might be low protein. It might just be low vitamins and minerals. So iodine, iron, zinc, vitamin A, these are all very significant micronutrients that many are deficient in America. And so right here, click here, you'll read this and I'll take you to a web page, where you can see the nutrient that is deficient that causes certain ailments. So look at vitamin A, how many times vitamin A and zinc come out. B complex vitamins, very important. Emotional health. B complex, irritability, insomnia, dizziness, iron. For emotional and mental health, skin, vitamin A and E, vitamin C, zinc. You have protein here, vitamin A again, zinc. This is hair and nails. I know a part of this picture is cut out, but you go ahead and when you click on that, you'll see the list of nutrients, micronutrients, and the potential ailments in adults here in America as well. But again, vitamin A and iron, because of the nutrition food labeling that's occurred in our country for the last 3 decades or so, our population in America is not very deficient anymore in those things. And so those will be removed from food labels. But what is going to replace it is potassium and vitamin D. Those will be going in there. These are some of the ones that we see to be a little more deficient amongst doctors' offices and children. And so food labels are going to be changed because of this. So these are things that government doesn't necessarily mandate, but they do make sure that food producers at least indicate to the consumers what nutrient levels are in that food that they are purchasing, so we can make better choices, and hopefully higher, that is above 5% in these things. High would be considered to be 20%. So if you're seeing 20% iron, 20% vitamin A, 20% iodine, any of these, that's considered to be of good nutrient value. 5% or less is low nutrient value. Somewhere in between, medium. But we were referring to this a little while ago. That is the protein calorie undernutrition. Here you see marasmus, that's wasting, and kwashiorkor, edematous, malnutrition. You can see this little boy, kind of a swollen body. Most of this is tissue right under the skin. So if you kind of push down on it, it's soft, and that's from lack of proteins really being made. You see it says caused by low protein calorie intake. The liver doesn't have enough of the protein in the diet to produce the albumin and the other proteins that circulate in the blood. And so it has a hypotonic, and so the water tends to leave and stay in the tissues, and it does not get picked back up into the bloodstream and carried around. So they have low blood pressure, low energy, the orange hair, it's frail, bad nails, bad skin, and a lot of swelling in the limbs, and a big liquid-filled belly. Wasting is this one over here, marasmus, all skin and bones. Loss of muscle makes movement difficult, and that's because the proteins like actin and myosin that are in your muscles for contraction can't exist. One, you don't have any proteins to build, but it can be converted into energy, and if necessary, your body will do that. It will break down those proteins in order to use as energy just to remain alive and to feed that brain, and so you're wasting away here. Very sad situation. So with chronic undernutrition, you get stunting of growth. Of course, you're short for your age. Then children most vulnerable are birth to 18 months. Very slow and hard to come out of. All right. So just look through here. Look through the maps. Here's global micronutrient deficiency. Look at the countries where there are many children. Read through these tabs. Zinc, iron, look at the percentages, and begin to answer these questions. The region with the greatest number of undernourished children is Africa. Is that true or false? Go back to those diagrams and see. Stunting is caused by acute undernutrition. True or false? Remember, there was 2 kinds, acute undernutrition and chronic undernutrition. Acute means intense, but for a short time. Chronic means over a long period of time. Go back and see which one that was. Which of the following is the most significant micronutrient deficiency? There were 2 that we saw for sure, and 3 that were ostracized. This chart here will tell us. All right, so answer these questions. There's the food insecurity cycle. If you're hungry and unnourished, you're likely to have poor health. Poor performance means probably poverty in the long term, and poverty means you're going to be hungry, and it's a vicious cycle that can go in either direction. All right, read through the data. American family households, food insecurity in the U.S. You've already had 2 videos at this point that show that food insecurity in the U.S. does exist, and it's very hard to identify who those people are. And that's why just getting the word out to the general public is of utmost importance. Obviously, then in the developing world, it's even worse. And you can see this color here, red, tough areas, orange, less developed, in transition in advanced economies. So go through these slides. I'm just clicking through here. I want to get to one particular place. The answer to this is in the slides up above. I'll try to get back on for this and give another lecture here on causes of food insecurity. We'll go through about 12 causes of insecurity before we hit the response to food insecurity next week. There's a couple more videos referred, which is to say that poverty isn't always a bad thing. Simple life is a good thing. But you have a choice to come out of poverty or not. That's what's key. Here it is, sorry. So food insecurity in Missouri. Specifically, I had skipped that slide earlier. Here's another video for you to watch. These are all anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. I think the other was 15 in the beginning. But I hope you kind of approach this with an open mind, open heart, and be really thankful of things that we have, and that we can be sitting in the comfort of our houses and dorm rooms watching videos, hopefully not putting us to sleep. And we'll see you again soon, and we'll pick up with response to food insecurity. Bye-bye.